We've got a fun panel today with a couple of experts who collect a lot of frequent flyer miles going across the Pacific Ocean. First, we have Billy Xu, who is the co-founder of 6502, game industry veteran. He's had a lot of jobs, a lot of different places. His company now has offices here in the Bay Area, over in Oakland, and another one over in Shanghai.
Right.
Billy?
Yep. Hi, how are you?
Have a seat. And next up is Michael Zhang, who is the CEO and founder of Firefly Games, another game developer with offices here in California and also over in Shanghai. And our topic today
I'm going to be sitting there or here?
Oh, still with me.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Our topic today is China's global expansion. And so we're excited to have guys with experience in game development on both sides of the ocean. But before we get to the questions, I wanted to show you just a couple of slides in numbers, which are hopefully going to come up.
Right, great.
The first slide here, it's one of those traditional economic slides that has data from China over the last decade. And so naturally it starts in the bottom left and goes up to the top right. This graph is showing overseas revenue from China game companies. So 10 years ago, down at 70 million made from overseas game sales, and now this past year up to 8 billion. This slide is showing China's domestic market. So from both foreign content and domestic content, the total revenue inside China's game market over the last 10 years started a decade ago at around 3 billion, now up over 30 billion. Today, China is the largest game market on the planet, surpassed the United States in 2015. And just for a quick little comparison, this chart is showing the top game companies in the world by game revenue. So number one today on the planet is Tencent, that little company I think you've all heard about. And then these other slides, this is the actual game revenue from each one of these other companies. So today, China is home to the largest game market. The overseas revenue is expanding, and also home to the largest game company on the planet. Turning to Michael and Billy, what games out of China, developed from companies that are over in China, coming over here to the Western markets, are doing well? What's successful today, and what types of trends are you seeing in games that are coming out of China that are doing well in the West?
I can jump into this question. So there's a couple of games, traditional Chinese company like Tencent and NetEase. For instance, we all know there's a very successful game in China developed by Tencent called King of Glory. Last year, they made over $4 billion just in China domestic market. So that game has been very successful. And also we have traditional tier one Chinese company like Elex, Clash of Kings, IGG, Lords Mobile, been very successful. Some game like Fun Plus. So those are the traditional Chinese company, and but now I do see the trend, even medium and smaller company putting their steps in the overseas market. Like I don't know, you guys heard about the company they developed called Idle Heroes. I'm the advisor for that company. Just last month, that game's made a $19 million last month. So our projection is $150 million for this year. So you will see not only the traditional tier one company, but more Chinese company are trying to come to the state and take their footprint.
Other than that, the Battle Royale games from China are doing very well. There are two games from NetEase the Root of Survival and Knives Out and the PUBG, two PUBGs from Tencent. They all made in China by the Chinese team. And the PUBG in particular is an IP by the Korean game Buho. And the Tencent was quick to notice the interest in the Chinese market and quickly make a mobile equivalent. And this is really in response to the Chinese player. They're demanding more. They're more in tune on the Western trend, and they're demanding quality game.
So can you guys hear from the back? No? Can you guys help, please?
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
That's the difference. Thank you.
So I have lived and worked in China for 12 years, and during that period of time, I noticed that there's a couple of differences between United States and China. The language, the food, the political system, maybe wrap it all up and call it culture. How does that play out in the game space? So you guys are both game developers. If you have folks in China developing game content for Western markets, are there some challenges that are traditionally faced?
I've been, working on the gaming industry since 2006. Initially taking China and the Korean and Asian titles to West market, and previously I was the CEO of a public company overseas, and now I have my own gaming company. This is my third gaming company. We work with Hollywood. We continue to working on that. So, based on Grant's question, in the last 12 years, I've been continually struggling for facing the challenges, and I try to figure out why and how. Things changed a couple of years ago because the development cost and where the resources put in the game, the quality of the game developed by some of the Chinese developer wasn't that great. So they really focus on the monetization compared with the storytelling, the graphic of the art. That's a couple of years ago. But nowadays, because they made a lot of money and they have a lot of resources to put on, some of the games still very successful in China but didn't have the similar success in the West. I've been asking myself, my team, and I've been talking with the CEO for public companies. I try to figure out why. And I can come up with some suggestion, or I don't know the final conclusion, because the market is completely different. Not only, we cannot 100% blame on the game developers, because they are facing the pressure and the challenges to completely different market. In China, we all understand there's no Google Play market. There are so many individual channels for Android market. So they are going to contribute traffic. We will call the UA, user acquisition traffic to the game. So every individual channel, they care about a day one retention. They care about a day one revenue. Literally day one. That's kind of insane. So for a game developer, they need to make their number very appealing in day one, at least from day one to day three. I talked with one of the CEOs of a public gaming company. He told me, Michael, we know it's wrong, but we only care the first 4 days revenue. And then if those 4 days revenue make good numbers, all the channels gonna pull their traffic and our game can continue to grow. And otherwise, if we want to see the longevity, whether gamers like it and slowly to grow, we will lose the opportunity. So if the game designed by that and we pull out to the Western market, we only cared about the day one revenue, it's gonna be really challenging, because the gamer here, number one, they will start to like your game, they get really into it, and they bring their friend and then start to pay. It's not like day one. If you force me to pay in the day one, I'm gonna give you a 1 star. So that's the key things. But luckily there's some Chinese developer, they've been focusing on overseas market. They understand the method, so they started to design the slower paced game, and then they made a success. So before, for me, I tried to blame on that side, but now I understand there's a reason they do that.
Yes, and the Chinese market been growing too fast, and that's the main reason. And if you're too slow, you try to make so-called quality game, and you may be too slow for the market opportunity. But the Chinese market is changing right now, and players are becoming more demanding for quality game and fair game. So you can't just want to take their money. They're willing to pay, but they will demand the quality service as well. So this is very in sync with the global expansion and to serve the Western market as well.
One thing that we've noticed in the headlines is there's this little company called Tencent that is doing a fair bit of investing and a fair bit of acquisitions. Supercell, Riot Games, Ubisoft, Glue Mobile, Epic, CJ Games, splashing out big on a lot of different investments and acquisitions. Is that a viable strategy? Is that something that seems to be pretty successful for companies from China to be able to break into the Western market? If it's harder to develop a game and launch that yourself, why not just buy something that's already successful?
I think for me that's a very smart decision, because understanding local market and to create some product that fit for a local market takes longer time of period and efforts. So Tencent did quite a few investment and been very successful. And similar company like Perfect World and 360, they did a similar investment. Some company focus on console and PC investment made a success as well. But when we define success, what's the, how long we're gonna talk about it? Like, I know Mark and Brandon, the co-founder of Riot Games, so there's a lot of back and forth discussion. Definitely there will be benefit being acquired by Tencent. They made their, not only for the Asian domestic market, but also in Asia. But what is for the long run? For the company, if they want to continue to use their own way to continue to do their thing, but different market, they have different demand. So the management, a different culture, so that will bring some, unknown expectations, like Supercell's dropping, and Riot Games, they've been waiting for the new product. So we'll see in 10 years. But I mean, people can't wait for 10 years. They want to see the first year, second year. But overall, Tencent did an excellent acquisition, and somebody from other company, like my friend Alex sitting there, he used to manage Perfect World acquisition. They did a beautiful work. I am hoping to see more, but on the other side, it's pretty scary, because you don't want to compete with one company. They take over the majority of the main competitors in the field. What are we going to do with that? So there are still controversial discussions.
So on the financial level, yes, for sure, it's been very, very successful. But the challenge is actually the integration. So now I'm seeing the Chinese executives grow really quickly because of these international deals. They have worldview. They understand what needs to be improved. But they have moved here, but the team is still here. The old team is not growing as fast. There's a gap in the middle, and that frustrates the executive, the old team, the internal team, and the new investor. So financially, yes, but like Michael was talking about, in the long run, does that help the whole company grow? Does that help them to compete in the world market? That remains to be seen.
So today, in the US political context, whenever we're talking about China, there's two words that are pretty close to the surface, and that is trade war.
Right.
We see that there's some tariffs that are being thrown out, and there's discussions about recutting the deal that was signed when China joined the WTO in 2001. In our industry, in the game industry, everything that we're talking about right now, launching China games in the United States, buying game companies in the West, doing self-operations in these markets. If that's flipped around, US game companies are not allowed to do any of that in the China market. And so the argument goes that perhaps because the China market is completely protected, that gave rise to a company like Tencent, and now the profits from that market are being used to compete with foreign companies in their own markets.
Right.
Is it enough? Is it time now for the US companies to raise their hands and say, look, let's get a level playing field here. If you can compete in this market, we should be able to compete in that market.
I think it's a very good question, and I will be very carefully making comments. I think the fire has been seizing, so we shouldn't risk the fire. And I think right now it's not the economic reason, it's more political reason. But being a person in the gaming industry, I'm a Chinese, but I manage 100% American company, so I do not want any conflicts going on. But facing the challenges, being a foreign developer, we cannot publish game in China. That raised two questions. Number one, shall we do the thing by ourselves? Because there's a lot of challenges. They have fraud transaction. They have people doing nasty things. Even for us, it's hard to understand. So finding a good partner will be the key. And secondly, if we compare it with a film industry in the past, because I participate a lot of events on the entertainment side. Before, there are only 10 movies can be played in China, but now it seems like more, 25. And if the game is do the co-production, will be different. So we need to find a smarter way to deal with the local, China government. I do believe entertainment definitely will cross the border, and we need both countries to support, and the gamers need that. And being the people who are in the gaming industry, I don't think there will be a limitation in the future.
Right. I want to point out one thing, that this is something we talked about earlier, that these two countries see game very differently. So to China, and they see this as a part of the culture. There are 700 million players in China playing games, including school kids. So the parents, when they complain that their kids are playing too much game, last year Chinese government simply put in more regulation. That's why many Chinese games now require your Chinese personal ID to play, because the personal ID has the date of birth built in, so it could tell whether it's a minor or not. And this has a lot of influence to their public opinion, and I think the Chinese see this as a priority. I'm not sure whether the U.S. negotiators see this as a top priority over like steel, aluminum, or manufacturing jobs. So.
We have just under 2 minutes left. A final question for you guys. You've both worked on co-developments with half the team in China, half the team in the United States. What's the secret to make that work?
I think for us, understanding each other, because we've been working with a lot of Hollywood IP projects, and we have to educate and communicate with China's studio to understand the value of the IP and what IP owner expect, and to respect each other. And because some of the games have been very successful in China, it's hard to tell them to change your design methodology just for the overseas market. But it's getting a lot of better because more Chinese player and even for people, they play a lot of overseas US company made games, so it's getting there.
Right. I would say two things. One is that you have to have a dedicated team with the expert from both sides working together. And the second thing is the start smart. Start with the right structure from day one. Day one, you just need to have the right talents together. Otherwise, it just is not going to work. Whether it's an investment from China or investment from the West to China.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for all of your insights today, which
Thank you for your
we
time.
appreciate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.